Well, Tony, I thought today a good discussion topic would be because you've worked on this with people and with yourself, and you've actually done it.
Yeah.
But what in the area of platform as a product, platform engineering, platform as a service, what is a platform?
Oh my gosh, the most loaded, open-ended question of all time. What is a platform? Yeah, so I would say a platform is something that takes a lot of disparate considerations and sort of bakes them in to a point where it is super easy for a development team to get a lot of things accomplished without having to think about all of those disparate things. What I mean by that is ideally that development team can really focus on taking an idea, coding and testing it, and then getting it into production without having to think about all of the other stuff that is happening behind the scenes and across all the various systems.
Yeah, so that's like I would call that in a good way like the outcome that you get, right? Kind of
Yeah.
kind of like the maybe this is wrong the whatever the kind of outside in looking thing. Like we've got this magic box, and this is what it allows you to do, right?
Yeah.
And I guess the first question of that, again across your experiences, like what when you look at that outcome, like what is the scope of it, like and to give you a sense of what I'm saying, like usually a platform doesn't include a UI framework,
Right. Oh,
right? Like
yeah. Yeah.
like
Okay.
like there's some line where it's like this is what the platform does, and that's it, right? Like so what's your sense of what's in the what it does, the function, the
Oh
capabilities
my
it has?
gosh. Again, there's so much that goes into that. So I'll try to think about from my personal experience. So I think from my personal experience, you know, uh, it would help organize even the people working on things. So there was some concept of like teams and
Mm.
and sort of products, right? Like the things that we're working on, the application services. So there's sort of this notion of I hate saying it, but there's like a resource and sort of asset management side of things, like an organization side. Um, and then there's certainly the sort of request and procurement of resources. So I thought that was really important. So, if,
Hmm.
if I'm a team that needs to work, on something, I need a place for that thing to live. I think there's obviously a series of APIs and like automation that comes with that, because all the magic doesn't happen without things being organized behind APIs and then I think let's see, I think for again if we're mostly developer focused for now, we could talk about operators, but from a developer side, very seamless interaction between, the changes that I'm making and then seeing the impacts of those changes. So some sort of live view of, quickly testing and validating. Um,
That's that sounds like something more than like a dashboard, but more like a feedback loop of
yes. Yeah.
I know something's. I guess in contrast, you would have I tell someone this should be deployed, and like
Yeah.
I don't know what happens after that.
Yeah. Uh, yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I think are you sort of referring to how black the black box is, like how magic it is, or
No, just the capabilities that are in it. Like I think it's like I'll show you like here's an example. Now, I mean you're going over a good list there, but we'll see how magically I can share a screen effectively, or not. Let's see what happens, and I'll show you like when people ask me this. Oh, like I try to show them like this diagram because we work at a place that sells a platform, and they're like, "Don't give us a vendor pitch," and you're like, "Why did you invite me here?" But anyhow, so this is like the CNCF reference architecture for a platform,
yes.
and
Yep.
whenever I show it, I'm like, if you look at this and you're like, that's everything, the answer is yes. Right?
Yes.
But it is like, I think it's a good start. And you are listing many of these, like, if not the technology, like what it does for you and why you need it, right? And so I don't know, what do you think of this diagram? What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think yes. So but again, for me, being on the customer side, just kind of, I think most people when they talk about platforms, they mention a lot of these very similar things. But for me, I think the real magic comes into how does that translate to how it gets incorporated and used. And so I think
Right.
there's like this really rich, like the people interaction with these things, like that's where the real magic happens. And so I think there's a lot of things around self-service. I think there's a lot of things around the lines between infrastructure and platforms and developers, and how much coordination and sort of handoffs are needed between those things. Because I think like when we see a diagram, it's so easy. I think everyone's going to say they have everything, right? So
Yeah.
then every company has a very some form of that diagram, and then but really it's about how does it get used and interacted with, that I think separates them.
Well, let's try to mix those two things together a little bit in the let I'll use the triggering word, the silos, the Conway's law, like all of that. Like,
Yeah.
if we look at this diagram again, you could either look at it and be like, ah, that's one unified silo of capabilities. We're all working together and integrated. Or you could be like, I can tell you exactly what your organization chart looks like and like where your problems are because you've drawn boxes around them.
Yeah.
Right? And so like, as you were saying, like the human part of it, I think, well, to put words in your mouth, like I think all that human process part is part of what a platform is.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just a pile of boxes. And like,
Yes.
so what is, without getting too abstract and I don't know, kind. Kind is the wrong word, but I always think of it as greeting card level commentary, right? Just like
Mm.
like what are we talking about? Like one team or like an organization that has multiple teams, or how does that kind of sort out that the way you arrange the people for a platform?
Oh, very good question. Ooh, um, I think at its core, I think there are, um, yeah. Yeah. So on the platform side, I think it's okay to view the platform itself as sort of a team, ideally a team, but maybe it's an organization. And the reason why I say that is because, for us, it started as a very small team, but then as we kind of brought on new functions, having the platform made it super easy for those. Uh, maybe it's better if I give a hard example. Yeah, yeah,
And when you say us, I assume you mean at Home Depot, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So I think so. For example, if we just talk about the core thing of like, hey, I have an app and I need somewhere for it to run, right? Then you have like, but we had a monitoring team, for example. So we had a team that was concerned about observability. I
Mm,
think a platform makes it very easy for you to take these concerns, and then it gives you a mechanism for exposing it to a lot of people at once so that they can take advantage of it. So I think again, if we
right.
were,
Right.
yeah, so like
I like that.
so we have this platform that it runs apps, and that's kind of everyone would agree like that's what it's for. But then you have all these concerns that come with running apps, and you take monitoring and observability as one. A platform in theory would make it very easy for you to say, hey, I have all these apps running. How do I monitor and observe all of them? You could take another small team that maybe is concerned about observability and monitoring, and to say, hey, let me work on your platform, and expose this so that everyone using the platform can take advantage of this. And that happens very quickly, like it's an overnight thing. And we saw this over and over again. I'll take another example is with SRE. So if you have a group of people that compare, like, or sorry, not compare, but are concerned about reliability engineering, they can take whatever their solution is, and assuming they are working within the confines of the platform, they can make that thing work for everyone, like at the same time overnight. And like, I think that's what I love about a platform is like it can start somewhere, but as your organization matures, instead of having to go and herd 6,000, 8,000 cats, you can have a very small group say, okay, what's the solution for this large organization? And by integrating it with the platform, everyone gets to take advantage of it quickly and seamlessly, and kind of overnight, like one time. I can do it one time and everyone gets to take advantage of it.
Right. I always get the phrases for this mixed up, but I think you would call that it gives you leverage. Like one way of saying is like as you scale up, you see. I told you I get these phrases wrong. You have sort of like leverage at scale that you only have to do it once for like to affect 1,000 things, right?
Yes.
Or this is the part I always mess up. It doesn't have marginal cost.
Yeah.
It's like again you get a multiplication as you get bigger. It takes less work to do something that applies to everything.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Like economies of scale comes up a lot. And, in fact, I think when we look at a lot of customers, there's sort of this, this n number of people you need to kind of do something. And then, but once you're there, the number of developers you support or the number of apps you support, that number can keep going up. But that number of people needed to support it doesn't go up, or it goes up at a much slower rate.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, there's some, again, so I think there's some magic in, which is like, hey, like, it's a complicated thing to some degree, right? To install it and configure it and run it. But once you have the number of people needed to do that, you shouldn't need to keep tacking on to that as your organization and workloads increase.
Right. Yeah. I remember. I mean, this is a while ago. I was talking with someone who worked at like one of the government clouds. Remember when there were all the GDSs out there?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, well, are they still there?
There's a couple. Yeah.
And they were saying when they first set up their platform, which was based on Cloud Foundry, they for the first, I'm making these numbers up from memory, 6 or 8 months, like they knew all the platforms that ran on. I mean, the applications that ran on it. And then after that, they had no idea what was running on it.
Yes.
Right? And the point being that I guess at some point they got over that right? Like whatever that economic term is. They got over the cost, whatever.
Yeah.
But that seems to be a common story and then when you talk with people who are running platforms, they'll tell you, depending on how they size it, but there'll be hundreds, thousands of applications, if not more. And at that point, there's no way you would know what's running, which is
correct. Yeah.
A benefit of what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, yes. And I think that's one of, again, when I was going back to the earlier definition of a platform, I think that's one of the, it's sort of one of it's like a part of the litmus test for how good the platform is that, if you have infrastructure people, but you never really have to interact with them or depend on them, they're not a gatekeeper, they're not a bottleneck, right? And if you have developers and that sort of connection between the platform owners and the developers, and again, if that level of interaction is either minimal, there's no friction, right? There's no bottlenecks. So I think it's where when you have these delineations of function that don't require handoffs and communication, like that's really important because it's, I'm a big comp sci nerd, but like, the delivering software is a complex system. And so, the way that you maximize throughput is by eliminating or maximizing any bottlenecks. And a good platform doesn't have bottlenecks organizationally, I think is the right way to put it. You're on mute. There you go.
Yeah. So I think we got a couple of things we can sort out. One, well, there's a big footnote on this, which maybe we can get to, but you have applications you want to run, probably that you've written yourself, and I mean this, the collective organization.
Yeah.
The footnote here is like, you could also just run services that something else uses. Like it doesn't, you could call that an application. But pertinently nowadays, you could just like run, am I going to get this terminology right? I'm trying to learn this stuff. You could just run inference. You could just run, you could just run an AI service, and like someone could use whatever, whether they want to do code gen or maybe they're using some desktop thing like Goose or something. They just attach to it and use it, which isn't exactly an application, but whatever.
Right.
You're just running. You generally have applications, and then it seems like the other, again, kind of coming from how you do it, kind of the bottom instead of the outside in, is there's a lot of self-service.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
and that it's not only self-service in like getting some, like someone getting access or a developer deploying their code, but it's kind of like the mentality you have across everything. Like, we should assume that a person doesn't need to be involved aside from the one who wants something.
Right.
Right. And so that seems, so far those seem like the core things to pay attention to, and I'm sure there's more.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's where, autonomy, this notion of autonomy and but again, as a platform, especially as a platform that you own as a company, again, like it allows you to have the security people, for example, really do care. And so they can go into the platform and work with the platform team to say, hey, like here's the things that are allowed or not allowed. And so by doing so, you get this notion of autonomy within a company, again, across thousands and thousands of developers. And when they, there's guardrails that exist, but they don't kind of feel like they're bumping into them all the time. And like, that's the thing that I love is, again, it's like there's all of these separations of concerns around whether it be infrastructure, capacity management, developer experience, operator experience, security, observability. Like everyone can kind of take the thing that they care about and plug it into a way that everyone else gets to benefit from it without needing to to sit there and be a gatekeeper and a ticket approver. And like, it just all works seamlessly and autonomously.
So I feel like this part is like, I mean, this is November 25th, 2025. We're like well into the middle of the first half of platform engineering. Maybe even in like, it's just like, so it's out there as a new way of talking about platform stuff for several years. I sound like some weird old fogey who's just or something. But like what you're going over there is something I don't hear very much about in the I'm just going to say platform instead of platform engineering, but in the platform community at the moment is to rephrase it is this notion of, well, I'll talk about how you do it and see if that matters. But because you've standardized things in the platform, it's easy for other groups to come in and do things. That's a great phrasing. But as always, I think one way of explaining it is to contrast it with something. So, security and audit, all that stuff is always a good example. It could also, let's say you have your security people and they want to make sure that things are running, they're configured in a specific way. And I guess in contrast to a platform, you could have, let's say we've got 500 applications and we have, I don't know, I'll make it simple, 100 ways of running that application, right? Like we've got like over here, we got some old lamp stacks. Over here, we're running whatever a WASM is. Over here, we got a bunch of GitHub actions firing off things. Like you've got all these different the runtime environment. And in that situation, the security group has to come in and look at every single one of those runtime environments. And yes. Then also the way, I mean, I guess we can really FUD it up, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Like also you have to look at how the applications are packaged and configured to like run on those runtimes as well, the applications yes. themselves. But what you're saying is with the platform, and I'm spending a lot of time on this because again, I don't think people talk about it very much. When those third-party groups, the security people come in, they kind of only have to do it once. That's overstating it a little bit. But
Yes.
they can check the platform, and if you've got a standardized way that development is done, they can check that. And I guess the equivalency, the way that a lot of people handle this is, they try to have. I have a lot of conversations with people who are like, we have the certified container that you build things in,
Right.
and that's
Right.
that's kind of like, there's those animals that put this. They're like I think a starfish puts its stomach outside of its body when it eats.
I'll take your
That
word
kind of
for it.
that kind of feels like the equivalent of like, you instead of the platform doing it, it's like throwing its stomach as a container out, and that's how it contains things for it.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think that is one of the key differences is again, in most customers and in my personal experience, I think what tends to happen is every silo or, sort of vertical concern, right? We can call it that. They tend to have like their way of accomplishing, like they have a list of things they need to accomplish, like their checklist. And I think where the fault comes in is that, whenever new technology is trying to be introduced, everyone wants their concern to be handled the way that they're familiar with. And I think what's interesting about the platform side of things and is and this was one of the things that was the hardest hurdle for us to get over is when you bring in a platform, it's like they only work because of sort of the opinionations and the federation and sort of the compromises that they've sort of landed on internally as a platform. But what
Right.
that means is that if you're a security group, you know, there are some ways for you to kind of plug and play your way of doing things. But I think ideally the best way to do it is for each of these vertical concerns to come in and say, okay, here's the things I care about. How do I ensure they happen within the confines of this platform? And I think when they do that, they're much more successful. And there's a lot of examples of that, especially from like a security perspective. But I think where a lot of companies kind of tend to fall apart in rolling some of these things out is all of these separate groups want to continue to do things the way that they have done them in the past because they know that works. But it only works sort of locally optimized, and it doesn't work as a part of a complex system. And so, and what a platform does is it allows you to say, listen, like, yes, I'm asking you to do a little bit more work, but what I'm asking you to do is to put that work in, and you only have to do it once. And now everyone that uses the platform from now until in eternity will benefit from that work. And that is way less, that's a lot less work than to your point, which is to say, okay, like we have this new security standard. Now, like we have to hire a bunch of PMs and we have to bring in outside help because we have to come up with this remediation plan. And it's a huge initiative. It's going to take 18 months and we have to visit all these teams. Like that is because everything is different. And so I think that's, you do the little bit of work up front and you take advantage of it versus having to continuously herd thousands of cats. I think that's the big difference.
So to not ask a loaded question and go to the second question, obviously it's the case that in most large organizations, there's a lot of non-standard stuff running around, like
Yes.
a bunch of different runtimes and things like that. So
Yes.
we don't need to ascertain that.
Yeah.
And
Despite all the effort that, and sort of, slideware that goes into the contract.
sure,
Yes.
just decades of awareness that it's a terrible way to live your life.
Yes.
Right. It's
Yeah.
just like I mean, my silly example here is like we all know that we should floss multiple times a day, and I know there's at least one person in the world who doesn't, despite knowing that.
Right.
Being myself, and I suspect there's a few other humans who are like that. Right.
Yes,
So
exactly.
you can know something is a great idea and at the same time not do it at all. So
Yeah, and
software.
again, it's not because of not wanting to. I think it's more of the intentions are there, the work is there. I just think the reality is, again, when you're in a complex system, it doesn't work the way that you envision. So
Right, and then so that's the actual question is, I guess. We'll draw it out. So how does an organization get to that point where they're not flossing daily? so to speak? Like
Yeah.
what is the I mean, if it's someone maliciously doing something, that doesn't really count. But like, what
Yeah.
is the not only understandable, but like the profitable reasons why that happens?
Yeah. I
You know,
mean,
like
yeah, I mean, I think that's again, I think it's sort of this vicious cycle, but I mean, this is the friction between like, the business, right, getting work done, and then a lot of these sort of corporate concerns around like security and access controls, right, and monitoring. So I think there's, but at the end of the day, I think what ends up happening is the business will tend to win, right? Like at some point,
mm,
people have to get things done, and then I think that's where they tend to fall apart. Maybe it's an exception this time. Maybe it becomes this thing that, like, hey, we can sign off an approval, or I found another environment that it doesn't have the same strict whatever, right, policies or something, right? So I think or typically, this actually, let me put it this way: there tends to be at least one business unit that is too big to fail, and they come and they say, um, yeah, this is all great, but that's not what I need, and it doesn't work for me, or it's going to take too long, so we're going to do this thing instead, and everyone has to get behind it, and like, and that just keeps happening, like, to some degree. And yeah, so I think the key thing is, like, again, it's a platform. I say this all the time, but the guardrails are there, but business units shouldn't feel like they're ever running into them. And if that's happening, then like that's a good success.
and so that's a good point to get to, like how platforms evolve, like because there we this notion still is mentioned every now and then. I was just looking at starting to, as we say in marketing, refresh an older white paper that we have. And that notion is the platform as a product. Like we had this, like way back. I say we collectively, as in the group. But we I think back in 2017 we wrote this paper, and then it was revised in like 2021, and but it was this notion from the when Tanzu was pivotal, and you were around during this time. You probably saw some presentation where we used the phrase platform as a product, but uh, it's this notion of product managing the platform, and like what's that mean?
Yeah. So I think I'm not trying to pat myself on the back too hard, but I think I was landing in the same place also. And again, I think this is because of where I came from. I came from the application product side of things.
Mm,
And then when I was sort of, given the platform team, I didn't know any other way to manage it. And so, I remember, we didn't have UXers, we didn't have people talking to users and getting their feedback and figuring out
right.
like what was important to them. And I do remember, I was like, okay, like I don't know how to run this platform because I've never ran a platform before. So to me, I was like, the best way to figure that out is to probably go ask the people that would be using the platform. And so
Right,
then,
to understand it through your users.
yes, exactly. And so I think for me, what was strange was like, yeah, but okay, who's going to do that? Because I had no one in my organization or my team that was disciplined to do that. And
Mm,
so I remember, again, this is a long story to get to the answer, but I remember, we had some, like all companies, there's some turnover, and I had some open headcount. And instead of hiring another, like, operator or systems admin, I said, I want to hire a UX person. And I just remember the sort of smoke that started coming out of like HR, which was like, hold on, like that's not even a job title in this organization. Like that only exists on the business side. And I was like,
yeah.
okay, like what, I don't know, like let's hire them from, anyway, long story short. What is I think that's the key thing, is that I think the platform or product means not losing focus from what the business is trying to do, while at the same time being intimately aware of all of the corporate concerns around regulatory and compliance and security and access controls. So I don't know if you're familiar with that whole, I think IDEO did it. They had those three lenses, right? Feasibility, viability, desirability.
All
I
right.
think platform as a product is the thing that sits in the intersection of those three circles, and it's maximizing the area between all three of those things. So you have, you
Right.
know, you have these financial concerns, you have like your developers trying to be productive and they want to use something, but then you also have all these security and compliance concerns, and you're trying to make all of those people as happy as they can be. That's where platform as a product lives.
What are those three things?
Desirability,
Uh-huh.
and then feasibility and viability.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I like that because one of the things I have conversations about in my head when I'm dreaming about platform engineering or whatever is the broader issue is like, what does it look like day to day to product manage a platform? But then the other issue is when you're product managing something, it's usually because you're selling a product to a customer, and you try to focus in on like one type of user or customer. And this is why in enterprise software things get weird, because your user is often not the one who buys the software, and so
Yeah.
that creates all sorts of excitement. But
That's one word for it. Yes.
yeah. But in the case of product managing a platform, like as you were just going over, and as you were kind of saying earlier, we'll bring them up, but like the security people are also your customer,
Yes.
or not. Like is that the right way to think about things?
Yes.
Like, do
I mean, there's lots of ways to think about them. Some people may view them as a series of constraints that no solution can sort of exist outside of, right? So,
that sounds like
um,
a very polite way of saying
um,
tedious annoyances.
but I say that, but it's an important function, and I think they kind of
Right,
get a
exactly.
bad
No,
rap.
that's
Yeah.
the point. Is like
Yeah.
if they're your customers, it's not because they're bad. It's just like you genuinely
Yes.
want to like
Yes.
show them value, or
It,
do their stuff.
and this is where this is why I think most companies kind of get into this quagmire is without having a group that is trying to bring all of those concerns together. What you tend to see is groups that sort of locally optimize and maximize only one portion of them. And so then you could get someone at an executive level that only cares about the bottom line cost, and then they'll make a sweeping statement like, "Oh, we got to slash cost by 20%." But that doesn't take into account, right? Like desirability, right? Like
Right,
there,
right. The three things. Yeah.
yeah. And so like that's why I think it's important to have a body and a voice that is bringing people together versus all of these groups just kind of locally maximizing their concerns.
Right, right. And as you're going over, right, from the what I like about this three ring circus is it lets not only the product manager, but it kind of lets everyone know that these are the three things we're delivering. So like it's not just that we want like a seamless automated self-service developer experience.
Right.
Kind of like if you go to the obligatory definition of a platform, I could share my screen and bring it up. Maybe I should. But there's the Evan Bochner definition from the ThoughtWorks post in 2018 that goes over like what a platform is. Great definition. But it's like that definition is only from the developer point of view. And it implies a little bit of operational stuff, like operating it. But
Yeah.
maybe I should actually look, whatever. But I'm pretty sure that that definition doesn't say anything about security,
Yeah.
right? And so with that three ring framing, I would imagine not only for the product manager, but everyone kind of gets this understanding of like, oh, we have these three things we need to achieve, and then that kind of decomposes is always, now that I think of it, in nature a bad word for humans if you're being decomposed. But then it decomposes into what the actual roles are, which I don't know. It's good. It's interesting framing for why, for example, you would want to standardize more so that the
Yes.
security people, customers are happy, or the
Yeah.
auditors are happy, or even as you were going over, like the costs are more in control for
Yes.
things.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And again, there's again, I think there's multiple ways to look at it, but generally speaking, the sort of idealistic utopian end state would be all three circles are completely filled in, right? Like everyone's like completely happy, right? Like costs are low, people are productive, everything is super secure, we're fat. Like that's the ideal end state. But I think what happens is that's, if not impossible, it's difficult to achieve. And so then by having an entity and organization that sort of sits in there and is trying to collectively maximize those things, I think it brings about awareness and data so that when someone says there is this sort of overriding constraint that comes in, cost is a typical one. It's like, it's so easy to say, hey, let's slash cost by 20%. If you don't have a group that can speak to, hey, like, I hear you, let's try to do that. Here are the options, right? And achieving
Right.
that. And then what we give up by doing that is A, B, C, D, and E. Then like without that, that 20% cost will always happen. And then the way it happens may not be the best thing for the company. But when you have that group that sits in the middle and is intimately aware of all those things, I think it gives a level of insight to leadership so that when they do say that, now they're kind of faced with like options around the pros and cons of doing it.
Yeah.
And I think what's most important about that actually is when that now comes across, whatever that ultimate decision is, like, hey, we're cutting costs by 20%. Here's what's changing and here's why we're doing it. The impact that that messaging has on the development community is so much easier to kind of ingest and deal with than it is instead of having, oh, they're just taking all these things away, or we're switching to something else. And so I think just that level of explanation and reasoning is also super good for, morale and culture and productivity.
Maybe as a dangerous side note that becomes the main note. Like you're making me think that, of course, as people who sell software and platforms, like we encounter a lot of ROI conversations. Like, and is this price good? It should be lower. And you're making me think that a lot of ROI exercises you do is just helping people understand what they're paying for.
Yeah.
like and it almost, I mean, this is, blanket things are like always dangerous, but maybe there's kind of like a blanket way of thinking about doing an ROI exercise. And what it means is that people don't understand why they're paying for something. And so you have to
Yes.
you've got to kind of like illustrate it to them. And then once you understand it, you can figure out if you're paying too much or if you're getting a good deal. But it's sort of like, I would imagine, and this gets to that split I was talking about where the users and the buyers are often different people.
Yeah.
And it's hard. Well, I don't know. Does that seem to be what most ROI conversations are about?
Yeah. So I think I think if you are selling a product that sits firmly in one of those sort of vertical concerns or isolations, right? Like if you're selling observability and monitoring software, for example, I think it's much easier to have an ROI conversation with those stakeholders
Right.
versus when you're talking about
My understanding is you just compare to whatever Splunk's pricing is, and that's where your ROI comes from.
Look, when you said it, yeah. But what I really mean by that is when you're talking about a platform, which again, by definition, is sort of abstracting and sort of aggregating a bunch of separate concerns. Really, now the price of that is, the cost of that in order to figure out what the TCO would be within an organization. Now you're looking at the P&Ls of multiple vertical isolations, right?
Right.
And the case that even then, what doesn't get looked at often enough is on the BU side. Typically, when you're looking at disparate alternatives or sort of DIY stuff or whatever, I see this all the time in customers now. Every business unit now has 5, 10, 15, 20 people that they've hired just to make the thing work that is not reported upon, like when it comes from like a shared infrastructure group or a platform group. So if you're a
Right.
CEO or a CFO and you're looking at a TCO of a technical decision, what tends to get obfuscated is the cost to the business of all the resources they've hired to manage sort of that technical and operational gaps and noise and whatever the solution is. And again, there's no incentive for them to fix that because everyone wants to kind of like have headcount and a budget and like the organization. And so I think I'll be honest, like the biggest difficulty I have in sort of articulating platform ROI and TCO is every company has it, and every company says like, oh, you're going to get 5x this and 10x this, and you're going to look whatever. But then what the difficult part is to say is getting the messaging at the right people that says, hey, like our stuff costs this, but if you go with it, like all of these other groups are going to need far less people, or they're going to be able to work on new things.
You're
And
consolidating things.
yes, you are, which is, but when you're dealing with the people, to your point, the people that make the decision on buying the software, like we're talking to people making that decision, which would mean, cuts either to their budget or the more positive way is like, hey, like I can now free up half my resources to work on other things. That tends to be a harder sell, and so it's finding the right level of person for that messaging.
Right. It's almost like to try to string together a fancy phrase. Like, let's see, like cross silo ROI is not legible.
Yes.
It's like it's just almost impossible that if you have a shared resource across the more silos, the more groups in an organization a resource is shared across, which is to say, the more shared a resource is, the harder it is to figure out how it's helping you in monetary terms, right?
Correct.
It's, like outside of the realm of IT, which I never really like metaphorizing about computers. Computers in software got enough, you could just talk about them directly. But in this case, I think it works that like, it's sort of like asking what the ROI of your office building is. And like how would you account for that? Or the ROI, I guess probably people go through the ROI of printers they have in the building. They're just like, we don't print a lot, so there is no return on the investment because nothing comes out of them. But like, or like what's the ROI of the coffee place so that people stay there and do lunch, like all of these different things. I always wonder in like facilities management, do they have to make these ROI presentations? Because it seems like everyone's like, well, if you're not returning to office and stuff, you're just like, you got to have a place to work. It's like asking what the ROI of your house is. It's like, well, the return is you're not sleeping in the wild.
It's funny you bring that up and you mentioned facilities. I don't know the answer to that, but I will say as a sort of as an anecdote though, is when we brought this in, I remember there were conversations around, how do we do chargeback models? And that's how we typically did things, and our, the sponsoring executive at the time was like, we're not going to do that. Like, we are going to treat this like electricity. Like we this is a thing that we all need to get our work done. So don't think about it. Don't pay for it. Right. Like, and it took off, like everyone used it and adopted it and loved it. So I think there is something to that. But again, if you're running a business and trying to make a decision around like what solution to buy, unfortunately it comes up, and I think it's something that we do have to be good about talking about. I think the challenge is, I guess my message would be to any high level C-suite executive that's out there, is that the ROI and TCO conversation is going to be spanning a lot of your leaders when you're buying something like this, and that if that decision's coming from one of those leaders in one of those organizations, like I would probably dig into it more. So
dig into it as ask other people like how what
I would say get involved in the details, because
yeah. I mean, people are incented to do what they think is right.
Yeah, exactly.
to put it in a kind way. Yeah. Well, I think that's a good first episode we've had here. Maybe we should introduce ourselves and explain what's going on. Otherwise, I think based on the conversations we've had over the years, you and I will talk for 3 to 8 hours.
Yes.
Until we fall asleep or
put everyone else to sleep. Yeah.
Sure. Everyone else can decide what they want to do. But why don't you introduce yourself? We know a little bit about your background, but tell people who you are.
Yeah, so Tony McCulley been in some form of IT for, oh my gosh, I hate saying it, probably close to 30 years now. But um, software comp sci by trade, but also a lot of UX, product management, platform operations, kind of a jack of all trades. Came from the customer side, and now I am at Broadcom, sort of on the other side. And yeah.
And so I think well, you and I probably we recorded several things together over. I've worked here like 10 years, and I think that's probably as long as 9 years maybe, because I think I started in when did I start? Not 2018. That's when I moved here. 2010. Does that math work? I can't do math.
Yeah, I think we met. Was it?
Well,
Yeah,
the
how did?
way it was
Yeah.
either 2011 or 2012, because I
Yes.
remember I started at Pivotal in 2012, and then within 12 months I remember Home Depot had signed with Pivotal, and I remember going to a meeting of all the C-suite people where they were just I it's been long enough that I think the joke's still good. I was like, we had that meeting where the CFO was like, why did I just buy this? And that's what that meeting was.
Yes. Yep.
And to be fair, it wasn't hostile at all. Like I
No.
remember,
Right.
I don't remember all the people that were there, but I remember at some break I was talking with someone and I was like, "You guys are the most functional executives I think I've ever been in a room with,"
Yeah.
and like, so, and anyways, but it was so that must have been in 2011 or something. But then yeah, you worked at Home Depot for a while and we talked about we've recorded 3 or 4 episodes. So, and I think nowadays you have the role that some people would call a field CTO, an advisor, strategy. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's
I
all
don't know
sorts of
either.
titles for this stuff.
Yeah.
Usually enterprise strategy is somewhere in there. You
There
got to
you
work
go.
that in your title.
Yeah,
Strategist.
I'm gonna add that then if that's the current. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah, yeah. You can be field strategy CTO, enterprise advisor, consulting detective.
Yep.
I
It's like
think I
ordering
think
coffee. Yes.
That's right. Well, I was thinking we should start. I work on the DevRel team, and I have several coworkers, of course, and they do this thing that they call office hours for spring. And I thought like we should have an equivalent thing where we just get on some streaming each week and just talk about whatever it is we think is interesting, and eventually maybe have some audience people come and ask questions. So
Yeah.
here we are, and every time I have a call with someone, it's you're catching up with them, and so I started calling that Catsup, like
I like it.
CATSU up. So I thought we should call this the Tanzu Catsup, and unfortunately there's no emoji for ketchup. There's only a burger, but just as a little inside baseball, I use Gemini to make our little logo. It's
It looks
great.
so good.
Yeah, and then you don't
Great.
have to worry about maybe I should check, but then you don't have to worry about like usage rights and things like that, and it's nice. So
Nailed it.
there we go. We got the Tanzu Catsup, which we'll stream until we don't. We have it scheduled for well, I'm in Amsterdam, so it's Tuesday at 4 p.m. What time is that Eastern?
It's now Tuesday, 11 a.m. for me.
There you go. So that's the time we'll try to stream it weekly, and
Or well, yeah, it would be 10 a.m. for me is
10
when we
a.m.
started. Is when we started.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just accounting for daylight savings time, it could be plus or
Yeah,
minus an hour,
exactly.
depending on where you are. But so that's what we have, and it'll be on our the VMware Tanzu YouTube channel, and then I don't know, I'll stream it other places, like in my LinkedIn. I don't have access to the VMware Tanzu LinkedIn thing yet, but I'll add it to that, and So with that, I think that's it for this
Awesome.
time. Yeah.
Look forward to
You
next
got
week.
anything else you want to wedge in there?
No, it's good. I definitely have some topics. We can talk about them offline, but some of them are definitely fresh too. So be some good stuff to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, and thanks for the people who have been watching this. We see, speaking of Deshaun there, and someone named LinkedIn user. I don't know why it doesn't identify it. And then the usual assortment of fun people from, basically the reason you stream to Twitch is so you can see all the interesting, weird ways of inserting chats into things. So maybe I'll just stop streaming to that. But we'll see. All right, we'll see everyone next time. Yeah, next week. This week is Thanksgiving.
That's right. Next week.
All right,
Sounds
bye.
good. See you, Kote.